At first, Breeze looked like the kind of leader every street crew wanted. He was calm, confident, and people respected his authority. When Breeze walked into a room, nobody questioned who was in charge. The streets listened to him because he had already proven that he understood the game better than most people around him. He knew how to keep money flowing, how to manage the crew, and how to make sure rivals stayed out of his way. For young hustlers like Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan, working under Breeze felt like being part of something powerful. They believed they were learning from someone who had already mastered the rules of the streets. But the deeper problem with Breeze was something that was not easy to see in the beginning. Breeze was not interested in change. He believed the street life was the final destination. As long as the money kept coming and the crew stayed loyal, he felt there was no reason to build anything different. In his mind, running the corners, controlling territory, and keeping power in the streets was already the highest level of success. For some people in the crew, this mindset made perfect sense. Tommy never really questioned that life because he loved the excitement of it. The fast money, the danger, and the loyalty between the crew gave him everything he wanted. Kanan also respected Breeze because Breeze represented strength. Kanan admired the way Breeze controlled people and demanded respect. To Kanan, Breeze looked like the perfect example of a real street boss. But Ghost was starting to see things differently. Even while he was learning from Breeze, Ghost was quietly thinking about the future. He paid attention to how power worked not only in the streets, but also outside of them. He noticed how real influence existed in businesses, in clubs, and in places where people did not need to carry guns to control a city. The more Ghost thought about this, the more he realized that Breeze's world had limits. Breeze was powerful inside the streets, but he had no interest in building anything beyond them. That meant everyone working under him was also trapped inside that same life. No matter how smart Ghost became or how much money the crew made, they would always be stuck in the same cycle. Selling, protecting territory, fighting rivals, and looking over their shoulders every day. There would never be a clean way out. Another thing that made Breeze dangerous was the way he viewed loyalty. Breeze expected complete respect from his crew, and he believed that anyone who questioned the system was a problem. In his world, loyalty meant following the rules exactly as they were. If someone started thinking about doing things differently, Breeze could easily see that as a threat. This created a silent tension that slowly grew stronger over time. Ghost was still loyal on the surface, but inside his mind he was already planning a different future. The problem was that Breeze would never support those plans. Breeze believed the streets were permanent, and he expected his crew to believe the same thing. That is what made Breeze such a powerful but also dangerous leader. He was not cruel for no reason, and he was not reckless. The real danger was that he refused to move forward. His way of thinking locked everyone around him into the same path. Anyone who wanted something bigger would eventually have to make a difficult choice. For Ghost, that moment was getting closer every day. The more he thought about his future, the more he realized that as long as Breeze remained the leader, real change would never happen. Breeze would continue running the same operation, controlling the same corners, and expecting the same loyalty forever. And when someone with ambition realizes that their leader will never step aside, the situation slowly becomes a battle for control. What once looked like mentorship slowly turns into rivalry. Respect turns into frustration. And the person who once taught you the game can suddenly become the biggest obstacle, standing in your way. Breeze did not realize it at the time, but the very system he built was pushing Ghost toward a decision that would change everything. The crew was still making money. The streets still respected Breeze. And on the outside, everything looked stable. But under the surface, the future was already shifting. Because Ghost was no longer thinking like a soldier in Breeze's crew. He was beginning to think like the man who would replace him. As time passed, the difference between Ghost and Breeze became impossible to ignore. What once looked like a strong partnership slowly started to feel like a wall. Standing in Ghost's way, Breeze continued running the streets the same way he always had. The money came in, the crew stayed loyal, and the territory remained under control. For Breeze, that was proof that his system worked perfectly. But for Ghost, it began to feel like a trap. Ghost was not just another soldier in the crew anymore. He had started to understand the bigger picture of how power moved in the city. He noticed how real influence came from more than just street control. Clubs, businesses, and connections with powerful people could create a different kind of authority. That kind of power lasted longer and carried less risk than the dangerous life of constant street wars. The problem was that Breeze had no interest in that world. Every time Ghost thought about expanding the operation or changing the way things worked, he knew Breeze would never accept it. Breeze believed the streets were enough. To him, leaving the game or even trying to build something outside of it sounded like weakness. Breeze had already chosen the life he wanted, and he expected everyone under him to accept the same future. At first, Ghost tried to stay patient. He continued working under Breeze, making money and helping the crew stay strong. On the outside, everything looked normal. Breeze trusted Ghost because Ghost was smart and reliable. Tommy remained fiercely loyal, always ready to defend the crew and protect their position on the streets. Kanan respected Breeze's authority and followed his leadership without hesitation. The group looked solid from the outside, but inside Ghost's mind, the conflict was growing stronger. The more he thought about his future, the more he realized that waiting would never change anything. Breeze had already made up his mind about how the world worked. He would continue running the same operation year after year, never looking for something bigger. That meant anyone who wanted a different life would eventually have to break away. Breaking away, however, was not simple in the world they lived. In street, loyalty was serious, and leaving a powerful crew could easily turn into a deadly problem. If Ghost simply walked away, Breeze might see that as betrayal. If Ghost tried to start his own operation, it could start a war between people who once trusted each other. The situation was becoming more dangerous with every passing day. Ghost started to understand that there were only two possible outcomes. Either he would continue living under Breeze's control forever, or he would take power himself. In the streets, power rarely changes hands peacefully. Leaders hold on to their position until someone strong enough takes it away. That harsh reality slowly pushed Ghost toward a decision he never expected to face. The night everything changed did not happen because of one single argument. It was the result of years of growing frustration, ambition, and the feeling that the future was slipping away. Ghost realized that if Breeze stayed in charge, his own dreams would always remain impossible. The system Breeze created left no room for someone who wanted something more. So Ghost made the most difficult decision of his life. He chose to remove the obstacle standing between him and the future he wanted. Breeze was not just a rival boss. He was the man who had once guided the crew and helped build their power. But in the end, ambition and survival often push people to make choices that cannot be undone. When Ghost finally turned against Breeze, the entire balance of the streets shifted. The mentor who once controlled everything was suddenly gone, and the young man who used to follow orders was now stepping into leadership. That moment did more than just change one crew. It changed the entire direction of the power universe. Tommy stayed loyal to Ghost, trusting their partnership and believing they could build something even stronger together. Kanan's reaction to the situation would later create its own chain of events that affected everyone involved. But the most important result of that night was the birth of a new legend. Ghost was no longer just a smart hustler working under someone else's rule. From that moment forward, he became the man in control. The decision to remove Breeze opened the door for everything that happened later in the power story. The rise of Ghost, the complicated loyalty between him and Tommy, and the future conflicts with Kanan all trace back to that single moment. What started as a quiet disagreement about the future slowly turned into one of the most important turning points in the entire Power timeline. The night Breeze lost his life became the moment Ghost truly stepped into his destiny. The story that fans have been hearing about for years might finally start unfolding in front of us. Raising Kanan has always been about showing the early years of the Power universe, slowly revealing how the streets shaped the characters we later saw in the original story. Each season has moved the timeline a little closer to the moment when the younger generation of hustlers begin forming the relationships that will later define everything. With Season 5 getting closer, many fans believe the show is preparing to introduce one of the most important figures from the past, Breeze.